הנה מה טוב ומנעים שנסחים גם יחד
Gezintahait Street, episode Acharei Kedoshim.
Welcome,
and
everybody.
Here's your host, Bitzalel.
Welcome to Gezintahait Street. Later on, we're going to revisit that song, and we're going to have a story of the Rashbi when he answered Hine Matov Menayim Shavasachim Gam Yachad, and what the Rashbi was able to accomplish was that when the Jews go against the will of Hashem, then the level of Malchus and the level of Zeranpin turn away from each other and their faces are apart. And he was able with that Torah that they would face each other, and through that came the bracha of rain, and we'll talk about it later. And we're going to have a nice recipe tonight, black bean soup. But first, we'll have a story. And this story is called Yisrael from a Pit. During the Russo-Japanese War, the Rebbe Rashab, being a tzaddik, sent matzah and all the other Pesach needs to Jewish soldiers on the Japanese front. I believe they're on the border of Shanghai or something like that. Later, he got a telegram from them thanking him, in quotes, from those in the trenches. At that time, when that telegram came, the Rebbe Rashab told the story. By the way, this whole thing was told by the Frierdiker Rebbe. At that time, the Rebbe Rashab told the story in the name of the Alter Rebbe. The Baal Shem Tov would sign his name Yisrael from Okup. When you see stories of the Baal Shem Tov, it tells you he's from Okup. Even though his hometown was not Okup, it was Tlusk. Tlusk was a town that had been surrounded by a wall, but finally the wall was destroyed, and the only thing was left was the foundation holes. And the family of the Baal Shem Tov was so poor, their home was in one of the holes of the foundations of that wall. So when he signed his name, he said Baal Shem Tov from the pit, Israel from the pit, because that's where he grew up. His family home was in the hole in the ground. That's how poor they were. Okup in Russian means a pit. The Rebbe Rashab concluded, from the power of that pit, from that low place the Baal Shem Tov grew up, other pitfalls will be eliminated, for the power of the Baal Shem Tov never stops, as long as we stand close to him. That is up till now the story and the words of the Rebbe Rashab. Our Rebbe says that since the previous Rebbe told the story in Pesach, it has to have a connection to Pesach. The Rebbe explains further. Pesach incorporates opposing dynamics. On one hand, the Jews had descended to the 49th gate of spiritual uncleanliness, and if they stayed in Egypt even for another blink of an eye, they would have fallen to the 50th gate and they could never have been redeemed. On the other hand, the King of Kings, Hashem, the Holy One, blessed be He, revealed Himself to the Jews in His glory. The Rebbe Rashab explains His glory represents the royal aspects of the Infinite One, which is called Malchus of Ein Sof, and himself indicates his hidden beauty, which is Tiferes Hanelim. Meaning Tiferes before the Malchus of the Ein Sof, before the Tzimtzum. Never again did such a great revelation of godliness happen. Not even in the Beis Hamikdash in the Holy Temple. This great revelation was necessary to save the Jews from their low level and brought them to the most exalted place. The Rebbe continues, Psalm 130 says, from a narrow place I call to him, and from a wide place he answers. From that narrow place in the 49th gate of uncleanliness, there was a direct connection. We were brought to the revelation of Hashem's essential being. This expresses a deep teaching for us, for each one of us. When we tell a Jew that Mashiach can come in 1 second, he thinks about the state of the world and the double darkness that the world is in. And he thinks in particular of his own low level. And he says, how can we jump from such a low level in our narrow situation to the open space of godly revelation? It's inconceivable, whether in human intellect and even in spiritual intellect. How could such a jump be possible? However, the same process occurred when we left Egypt. We saw ourselves lifted from the narrow place to the wide open space, representing the essence of godliness. Furthermore, we too will be lifted from our lowly state of spiritual poverty to the complete open jubilation of the future redemption. Just like we were from Egypt, we're going to get out now. In fact, the revelations then will be much greater than they were, even than the redemption from Egypt. With our physical eyes, we will see Hashem himself without any concealments. Now we can explain how Israel from the pits connects to Pesach. At the time of the birth of the Baal Shem Tov, the Jewish people had been devastated from massive pogroms. We were in a comatose state. According to the sages, such a person can be revived through whispering his name in his ear. Through the Baal Shem Tov, whose name was ours, the Baal Shem Tov's name was Yisrael, the Jewish people were revived. The lowly state of the Jews was symbolized by the fact that the Baal Shem Tov's home was not even in a hovel in the city, it was in a hole on the outskirts of the town. Nevertheless, from that narrow place came the fountains of Chassidus, which will finally bring about the redemption through Melech HaMashiach. The expansion of Chassidus in place after place and in generation after generation has brought about the redemption closer and closer, even though the outer shell of reality, darkness remains. But on the inner level, the spring waters of Chassidus have purified the world to the point where the world is now fit for the revelation of Mashiach for this great jump, similar to what we had at Pesach time and even greater. This is the effect of the pit of the hole of the Besh, the Okap. The power of the Besh is ongoing, it never stops, through the pit of the Baal Shem Tov, through our efforts at spreading, and through our efforts at spreading the wellsprings of his Torah, we will be victorious. The victory will include the war against the Kol the Malach, at which point Hashem's name will be Shalom, and his throne will be Shalom. In other words, we'll experience the full revelation of Hashem himself here in this physical world now. The Vant Moshiach now. Are we ready for a musical interlude?
Yep, you ready, boys?
You're coming up
Here?
here?
Yeah, we're coming up there.
What happened to Mr. Krieger?
He told me. He said he's coming.
That's Krieger. That's what he said. Krieger. You ain't talking about some kind of weird ethic.
Hey, no, he's the one I got. I was gonna go down.
Ready, Foley? Come on.
What's the plan here?
Alright. You gotta do this whole one note.
Okay, we'll do that.
Alright, we got another double header. Acharei Kedoshim, two amazing poems by the great Jewish poet Ayin Heist. Here's the one for Acharei. Get my tuning fork. Ding ding. Ba bum ba ba bum 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 ba bum ba ba bum. Even the sons of Aaron learned in the offerings of fire, forfeited their lives when they aroused God's eye. Ba-bum, ba-ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-ba-bum. Even our deepest feelings, when they stroke forbidden desire, can cost us our soul as chaff to the fire. I have been slain by your fire, your fire. Too much pain being away from you. I have been consumed by your fire. I have been doomed by desire for you. Ba-bum, ba-ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-ba-bum. Even the sons of Aaron learned in the offerings of fire. They saved their lives when they aroused God's eye. Only the service as God wills strengthens man and heals his ills. Only love of holy hearts makes the whole greater than the parts. I have been slain by your fire, your fire. Too much pain, yeah, being away from you. And I have been consumed by your fire. I have been doomed by my desire for you. All right, back to you, Bitzalel.
That was beautiful. Not over the top, just right.
Well, you know, over the top is completely a possibility with us too.
Does everybody understand the reason we're not using instruments? It's called Spiros Omer, and we don't play music with instruments in these days. That's why we're doing a cappella. The recipe for tonight is black bean soup The way I make soup is I use a digital pressure cooker, which is an amazing, great thing. So what you do is you take this pressure cooker, and I don't know if all of them do, but you can get ones that have a stainless steel cooking pot. I chop up an onion, I put it in there, I take a handful of garlic, whether you use garlic powder or garlic bulbs. You throw them in. About 3 or 4 ounces of tomato paste, a spoonful of cocoa powder. The black beans you soak overnight before you make the soup. That makes them less gassy and makes them easier to cook. You put the beans in. I usually like to cut up a couple of potatoes. A lot of these ingredients are optional. And also what I do is I break in like 5 eggs, whole eggs. I tear up a little bit of seaweed and I put it in there. I put in some curry powder, a little bit of soy sauce, some apple cider vinegar. Cover it up with water. If all the solid stuff goes up half the pot, so I cover the water till 3/4 of the pot, you put it on there, you press soup, and usually if it takes like by then 60 minutes to make the soup, I usually push it up to like 70 minutes. Make sure the beans get soft. And then you walk away. You come back about an hour and a half later, and you have soup. There's no standing over a pot. It's supremely healthy. And by the way, if you're into meat, throw in a few tablespoons of hamburger in there. It's very delicious. The way I told you is vegetarian, but you can do it hamburger. It's very, very good. You have those eggs will be in there. The potatoes will be in there. It's like nice jewelry in the soup. You have the black beans, potato bone.
Yeah.
Now, we're in the times of the counting of the Omer. Therefore, let's count the Omer for tonight.
Ready for the Omer, everybody?
Does everybody understand what the counting of the Omer is? From the time of the second night of Pesach until the day before we get to Torah, we count the 49 days until we get to Torah. And the metaphor for it, on the second night of Pesach at the Seder, is like we get a bag full of gold coins. And we start to count the coins. This is the first day of the Omer. This is the second day of the Omer. On the Pesach, it's called Katnus Abba. It's like a child. When he first tastes wheat, he's able to call his father, Father. He has small brains. He doesn't know what a father is, but he's able to recognize that's his father. That's what we get on the first night of Pesach. The second night, we get the whole boat all at once. And from that time, we start to count until the 50th day. When we get to Torah, we count 49 days. So here's what we're going to say.
25. That's me. How much is it?
Hayom, today,
Hayom.
Chamisha is the Esrim, is the 25th day. Yom.
Yom.
Shehem,
Shehem.
Shalosa Shavuos, which are 3 weeks,
So Shavuos.
and 4 days of Yomer.
4 days.
Whoever didn't get that, I'm going to say it again slowly. And when you say this, you will be doing a mitzvah, and you'll be giving Hashem nachas. It's very easy to give Hashem nachas. And here's how you do it. Repeat after me. Today is the 25th day of the Omer. It's 3 weeks and 4 days of the Omer. Now, in the level of Spheros, it's the Sphere of Netzach, which, by the way, is the bris of the Rebbe Marash. He was born on Tiferes of Tiferes, and the 8th day after that is Netzach of Netzach. Okay. So, last week on Tuesday was the day of the Rebbe Rush. We've been learning how the spheres of Atzilus are hidden and dressed into the spheres of the world of Yetzirah from the Tillim 150. And last Tuesday was the birthday of the Rebbe Rush, which is Tiferes of Tiferes. And today is Netzach Netzach, and soon we're going to come to the yard site of the Rashbi, which is Hod of Hod. And there's a story of the Rashbi, who's Rabbi Shimon ben Bar Yochai, that one time the people needed rain. So they came to Rabbi Shimon to ask him, could he help them that should have rain? So obviously from the story, Rabbi Shimon was higher than physicality. Rain is called Geshem, it's called physicality. And he was higher than that. And he couldn't even consider the fact that there could be physicality. But the people came and they asked, they needed rain. So Rabbi Shimon's students went into him and they told him, you are like the Shekhinah. You are Shabbos. You are Levi Yosef. The people need rain. The Rebbe asked a question. What? Rabbi Shimon needed their praises to tell him, oh, you're such a great person, that he needed? No, because he's such a high level that they had to arouse in him this ability to connect with the world. So too, when we daven, we call to Hashem. And when we call to Hashem, we tell him, you are wise. And by saying that, it draws out from him his aspect of wisdom. And we tell him, you are kind, and it draws out from him his aspect of kindness. We tell him, you are merciful, and it draws out from him his aspect of mercy. It's not that we are praying to any kind of dynamics of Hashem. We're praying to Hashem himself. But just like a father, for example, loves his child, but that love can only be expressed through speech and action, through particular things. That love is too great and too high and too simple to be expressed only in particulars. So too the spheres. We've been explaining the spheres, how the spheres of Atzilus, you remember we want to learn what the 10 spheres are and what the 4 worlds are. So we're explaining how the spheres of Atzilus are dressed and hidden in the spheres of the world of Yetzirah. Now is Netzach of Netzach, and last week was the Tiferes of Tiferes, and soon will be Hod of Hod. And all those spheres of the world of Atzilus become dressed and hidden in the world of Yetzirah. But how they come into the world of Atzilus, the world of revealed godliness, is not understood. Godliness is completely simple, and it's above coming into any form, any kind of taste, or any kind of color. So how does it come in that there be a kindness in the world of Atzilus? There could be a wisdom in the world of Atzilus, because Hashem is completely separate and completely simple. The way that works is through a dynamic called the Eser Spiros Haganuzos, 10 hidden spheres, which are not actually spheros. They're called Bli Ma, they have no existence. They're only that Hashem allows the possibility that by him calling to him, by us calling to him through his name, he is able to reveal himself to us through these particulars. When we use the name Kel, Hashem reveals himself to us in the way of kindness. When we call him wise, he reveals himself in the ways of the wisdom. So therefore, in the simple lights of Hashem, not that it exists in there, the 10 spheros, there is only a possibility when we connect to him that he will come down and connect to us. Like it says, we will see him through our body, we will see him through our powers. He's the man on the throne, and from our man we will be able to connect with him. It says when a child starts saying blessings, I don't have a clock, by the way, if anybody can give me a
26.
When a child starts saying blessings, you're teaching him the foundation of being a Jew. And the foundation of being a Jew is not doing mitzvahs, not being holy, not being a smart guy. The foundation of being a Jew is to know that there's a God, and that God cares about you, and he's with you every second. Therefore, when we say a blessing, we say Baruch, and Baruch means that Hashem, from his high level of not being able to connect to the world, is being able to be drawn down to connect with us. And what is this level of Hashem that we're drawing down? Is Havaya. Is the level of godliness that's higher than space and time and higher than the world. And how do we accomplish that? Through Elokeinu, that Hashem is our God. Like he said, Anochi Havaya Elokeinu, I am your God. And through the fact that he's our God, we draw this over nature power, this higher than space and time, to come down to be the king of the world. Elokeinu Melech HaOlam, who creates everything through his decree. It's a very interesting thing. When we got the Torah, and we're coming up to that, that's what the calendar of the Omer is. Hashem said, Anochi Hashem Elokeinu, I am the Lord your God who took you out of Egypt. Now it says, Anochi, I, that's the level of God that's higher than any kind of understanding, any kind of form, any kind of substance, nothing that can be grasped. So the question is, how does he get into that Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and that Havaya to become Elokecho, to become our God? And the way he does that is because the Anochi, the I, is an acrostic of Ani, whatever it is, I write myself into the Torah. And how does he write himself in? Through the Shem Havaya. The Shem Havaya is Yud Kei Vav Kei. The Yud is just a drop of ink on a pen. The Hey is the expression of that drop, how it spreads out, which is the 5 fingers. The pen is the Vav. And the Hey is the expression on the paper, on the leather of Hashem's words of the Torah, I am the Lord your God. Do you want Mashiach now? Should we have a song now? All right. Okay, Mendel has another expression for Kedoshim, for Parshas Kedoshim, from the great Jewish poet Ayin Chai.
All right, here we go.
How we doing?
All right, gotta get back to our bluesy roots here. Blues! Sphere of blues! Ready, fully? Come on. To keep me holy, keep my commandments whole. Anyone you might break will take on you its toll. Respect for God, Sabbath, and parents combine to build a life of love and growth and poetry sublime. Be holy, and be holy for me. Yeah, be holy, a nation of priests. Oh, be holy, and learn my mysteries. Yeah, be holy, Mashiach will set you free. See the light of day. When my name and presence will be one, and my radiance and time the sun. Be holy, and be holy for me. Be holy, a nation of priests. Learn my mysteries. Yeah, be holy, Mashiach will set me free.
Stay there, we're going to sign off.
Make room for Malamud.
All right.
Foley. Come on in.
Yeah, go.
We're going to sign off now. Like, well, I hate to see you go. Like to stay with you forever.
Gezintahait,
Remember, kids.
Gezintahait. See you next week.
That all the people.
I don't know.